Canada is often remembered for its friendliness, hospitality, beautiful nature, high quality of life, and stable economy. However, now a harsh reality is unfolding. Millions of people in this country can no longer afford a basic living. House prices have skyrocketed, living costs have surged, but wages have remained almost unchanged since 2016, making it difficult for Canadians to make ends meet. Additionally, the increase in immigration has exacerbated the housing shortage and led to a rise in the number of homeless people since 2018. So, what are the real reasons that have led Canada to this situation? Let's explore and understand the factors affecting the economy of a developed country like Canada. When thinking of a developed country like Canada, you would envision a modern society where people can enjoy a high quality of life, a stable economy, and good public services, right? However, in recent years, some issues in society have gradually become apparent. A segment of the population can no longer afford to own a house and even struggles to find reasonable accommodation. Real estate prices in Canada have surged, with significant changes in major cities like Vancouver and Toronto. According to the Canadian Real Estate Association, CRE, in 2021, the average house price increased by 20% compared to the previous year, reaching an average of nearly $600,000. In major cities, the increase can reach 30% to 40% in recent years. So, what is happening with the housing market in this country? One of the main factors is the change in interest rates by the Bank of Canada. When interest rates rise, buyers have to pay more each month. But the reality is that not everyone can afford it. This has caused many people to postpone their home buying plans or seek shared living solutions. In addition, the shortage of new housing supply is also an important factor. Although the government has implemented measures to build affordable housing, the rate of new housing supply still does not meet demand due to challenges like rising construction costs and a lack of development land. Additionally, investment from foreign investors also contributes significantly to this price increase. A recent survey shows that more than 10% of real estate transactions in Vancouver are conducted by foreign investors, creating a housing shortage for local residents. The purchase of real estate in Canada by international investors, especially in major cities, has increased demand and pushed housing prices to levels that are difficult for local residents to reach. The impact of rising house prices is not limited to dry numbers. For millions of Canadians, the inability to own a home is not a simple issue. They face difficulties in finding suitable housing, which forces them to live in suburban areas far from the city center, where the cost of living is lower. But they have to deal with long, expensive commutes. A resident living in Toronto shared, "My family and I have been living in a small apartment for the past 3 years. Even though we have saved a lot, buying a house is impossible. We have to commute about 1 hour every day to get to work, and the travel costs are also increasing. Life has become harder than ever." The rising prices of houses and rent, while wages have not changed much, have caused many residents to struggle in finding stable housing. Many people are reluctantly becoming homeless because they cannot afford to rent a house. According to forecasts, if there are no major changes, the number of homeless people in Canada could significantly increase in the coming years. The streets and shelters are both full, and tent cities have become a common sight in major Canadian cities. Vancouver and Toronto have witnessed an increase in the number of homeless people in recent years. Data from the Canadian homelessness organization, Homeless Hub, shows that the number of homeless people in Vancouver has increased by 20% from 2018 to 2023. This becomes even more difficult when winter in Canada can be very cold, with temperatures dropping below freezing for many months, posing additional challenges for those without stable housing. This situation, along with the issue of poverty, creates many challenges for the community and the government. Meanwhile, the housing support policies of the Canadian government have somewhat improved the homelessness situation, but they're still not enough to fully address the current difficulties. The government has implemented measures such as home purchase loan assistance for first-time buyers, but these policies have not yet been able to meet the needs of the people. Moreover, tax measures on real estate also need to be strengthened to control speculation and reduce pressure on the housing market. However, not everything is a challenge. Community groups and nonprofit organizations are striving to build affordable housing models and support low-income families. This shows that despite the many difficulties, Canada can still find sustainable solutions to improve the housing situation in the future. What do you think about house prices and rental prices in Canada? Are you facing similar difficulties? Please share with us by leaving a comment below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to follow more topics. Thank you. Now, let's continue. In a wealthy country like Canada, where every citizen is expected to have a stable and comfortable life, people are now facing challenges with the rising cost of living. A survey from the bankruptcy management company MNP shows that in July 2023, 52% of Canadians were just $200 away from financial bankruptcy, an increase of 46% in just 3 months. It is noteworthy that 35% of Canadian households, despite working very hard, still struggled to pay their monthly bills. We couldn't pay for rent, and while paying for rent, we couldn't pay for anything else. The most essential items for people have all increased in price. Only food prices have increased by about 10%, a concerning increase. The cost of utilities is no exception, adding more difficulties for lower and middle-income families. People nowadays have to calculate their daily expenses carefully, such as only buying the most essential products or limiting their diets to save money. Luxurious expenses such as vacations or dining out have become out of reach for many families. A resident living in Toronto shared, "With my current salary, I have to be very careful when going to the market every week. I only buy the essentials for the family, not daring to buy any extra treats or anything that isn't truly necessary. Electricity, water, and other services increase every year with no signs of decreasing. We have to cut back on non-essential things to be able to sustain our lives. While prices continue to soar, wages have remained almost stagnant. Even decreasing compared to inflation. Since 2006, the real wages of workers have not increased significantly." A study by the Canadian Policy Research Networks, CPRN, shows that in 2022, the average wage of a full-time worker only increased by about 1.7%, while inflation reached 6.8%, significantly reducing the purchasing power of the people. Therefore, it is not difficult to understand why many Canadians find it hard to make ends meet. A teacher in Vancouver confided, "We are people working in the education sector, but our salaries are not enough to cover living expenses in the city. I have to take on extra work to earn more money. But even though I work hard, by the end of the month, I still feel like I can't breathe because the expenses keep piling up." In addition, government pandemic-related subsidies have ended, putting additional pressure on the finances of many families. This particularly affects the younger generation in Canada, as they face much lower levels of happiness compared to previous generations. The World Happiness Report ranks Canada as the 15th happiest country, but the youth are near the bottom of the rankings at 58th place. When income is insufficient to meet basic needs, many families are forced to borrow money to sustain their lives. According to the report from the Bank of Canada, the number of households with debt has significantly increased in recent years. People are facing a spiral as they have to use credit cards or borrow money to pay for monthly expenses, causing the financial burden to increase. Some citizens also feel dissatisfied with what the government is doing. Although the situation of living costs and wages being disproportionate remains a major issue for many families, individual efforts to overcome challenges still foster a belief in the possibility of change. The Canadian community is still seeking ways to adapt and overcome this difficult period, with the hope that in the future, policies and solutions will be implemented to improve the financial situation and help people live a life worthy of their efforts. Immigration is one of the important factors affecting the lives of Canadians in recent years. For many years, Canada has maintained an immigration quota of about 250,000 people each year. After the COVID-19 pandemic ended, the government continued to increase the immigration target to about 400,000 people per year and is expected to welcome around 550,000 immigrants per year by 2025. Not stopping there, Canada has also developed other methods to attract immigrants, including international students. Hundreds of thousands of students from other countries are studying at colleges and universities in Canada. In addition, hundreds of thousands of temporary foreign workers are also coming to Canada, contributing to an annual population growth rate of nearly 3%. These numbers have helped Canada become the developed country with the fastest population growth rate in the world. However, not everyone agrees with this expanded immigration policy. In reality, Canada is facing significant challenges in maintaining a robust infrastructure system to meet the increasing demands of its growing population. Housing, food, and infrastructure issues have not been improved in a timely manner to keep pace with the population growth rate. While Canada's GDP only increased by 0.5% compared to the previous year, the population growth rate reached 3%, indicating that the economy cannot keep up with the population increase. Derek Holt, Vice President and Director of Capital Market Economics at Scotiabank, warned that the significant increase in immigration without improving infrastructure will lead to persistent housing inflation, something he has been warning about since last year. Some experts suggest that the government could take two measures to alleviate the cost of living crisis: reducing the level of immigration and cutting debt spending. However, this is not easy to implement. Recently, the Canadian Minister of Immigration referred to international students as valuable assets, and collecting tuition fees from international students is still considered an important source of revenue for the country. As for reducing the budget deficit, this seems to be quite difficult. Prime Minister Trudeau's government is receiving support from the New Democratic Party, NDP, which opposes cuts to social programs. Therefore, the government can only hold press conferences and make commitments, but there is no clarity on long-term solutions. Under pressure from public opinion, the government has finally announced a plan to restrict immigration in the coming years. However, for many people, whether this decision can be timely remains a question. Changes in immigration policy and improving the quality of life for citizens are urgent issues that Canada needs to address in the future. Canada, a country renowned for its image of development and opportunity, where people are often expected to have a fulfilling and happy life, is now showing a contrasting picture. A large segment of the population cannot enjoy a prosperous life like the rest of society. The increasing inequality is becoming a serious issue as the wealthy maintain a luxurious lifestyle while the poor struggle daily with financial difficulties and limited opportunities. So, what is causing Canadian society to become increasingly polarized, and is there any hope for the future? The wealth gap in Canada has significantly increased in recent years, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. A report by the Canadian Policy Research Institute, CIPRI, indicates that the poverty rate increased to 14% in 2022, with more than 5 million people living below the poverty line. Meanwhile, wealthy families, especially those who own real estate, benefit from the rising property prices. This has created a clear division between social classes, as those who do not own real estate cannot enjoy the benefits of economic development. Uneven distribution of resources is one of the main causes of this injustice. Although the Canadian government has made efforts to support the poor, such as increasing social welfare and developing affordable housing programs, these efforts have not yet been sufficient to address the root of the problem. A young engineer living in Toronto shared, "Although I have put in my utmost effort at work, with my current salary, I feel like I cannot make any progress. Everything here is too expensive, and I can't build a good life for my family. Therefore, I decided to seek opportunities in the US, where the cost of living is more reasonable." Now, what do you think about Canada's current situation and its future prospects? Let me know your thoughts below.